The bowling alley went quiet one lane at a time. First, the music stopped above lane 7. Then, the pins stopped crashing. By the time I turned around, every child at Harper's 13th birthday was staring at the elderly couple, standing beside the shoe counter, with a silver suitcase between them. I had not seen Lorraine and Malcolm Cole since Caleb's funeral almost 2 years earlier. Harper had not received a birthday card from them in 4. Lorraine looked past me as if I were an employee blocking a hallway. "We came for our granddaughter." Malcolm rolled the suitcase forward until it touched the toe of Harper's rented bowling shoe. Harper's face changed when she saw it. Not fear exactly. She looked from the suitcase to her grandparents and understood that they expected her to leave. I stepped between them. "You need to leave." Lorraine smiled with the patience adults use when they believe a child belongs to them. "This stopped being your decision when our son died." Then she looked directly at Harper and said the words that split the room in half. "Blood belongs with blood. Pack your things." No one moved. The birthday candles were still burning behind Harper, 13 small flames reflected in the polished lanes. Harper looked at me. I wanted to tell her not to touch the suitcase. I wanted to drag it outside, call security, and lock every door between my daughter and the people who had ignored her for years. But before I could speak, Harper knelt and opened it herself. Inside were gray hospital slippers, loose sweatpants, a donor information booklet, a prepaid hotel envelope, and a plain white plastic wristband looped through the zipper of an inner pocket, with her full name printed beneath the words, "Family Donor Evaluation." It carried no hospital logo and no medical record number. There was no toothbrush, no schoolwork, no inhaler, nothing that belonged to the life she actually lived. Lorraine lowered her voice. "Ruby is sick again. You may be the only one who can save her." Harper did not answer. She walked to the cake table and lifted the framed photograph we kept beside the candles. Caleb was laughing in it, one hand on Harper's shoulder, the other holding the purple bowling ball he had bought her when she turned 8. She returned to the suitcase and placed her father's photograph on top of the hospital booklet. Then she leaned close enough that only the 4 of us should have heard her. "Dad gave me your blood. She taught me it still belongs to me." Lorraine stepped back first. Malcolm followed. That was the moment I understood. They had not come to bring Harper into their family. They had come because, for the first time in years, something inside her body had become useful to them. Before I tell you what they had planned for the next morning, I hope you are doing well today. Stay with me, subscribe to the channel, and tell me this. Does sharing someone's blood ever give you the right to decide what they must sacrifice? Lorraine recovered first. Her mouth softened, and the command in her voice disappeared so quickly that I knew it had only been a tactic. "Harper, sweetheart, Ruby is 10, she said. She is frightened and she does not have much time. We would never ask this if it were not necessary." Harper remained beside the open suitcase. Her fingers rested against the edge of Caleb's frame, but she did not pick it up. I could see the question forming behind her eyes before she had words for it. Malcolm crouched and straightened the hotel envelope as though neat paper could make the situation reasonable. "It is only 2 nights, he said. "An evaluation tomorrow. More testing if the doctors need it. Then we bring you home. We have already arranged everything." "You arranged nothing with me," I said. Several parents had moved closer to their children. Harper's friends stood in a loose half-circle, still wearing rented shoes, their expressions caught between confusion and embarrassment. I refused to let Lorraine turn my daughter's birthday into a public argument about whether she was a good enough person to give up part of herself. I raised my hand toward the front desk. "I need the manager." A man named Joel, who had helped me carry the cake inside 20 minutes earlier, came around the counter. I asked him to stand with us while Lorraine and Malcolm collected their coats and left. I kept my voice low. I did not touch either of them, and I did not let Malcolm touch the suitcase again. Lorraine looked at the manager, then at the watching parents, and understood that I had given her no scene she could later describe as hysteria. Malcolm stood slowly. Caleb turned his back on a sick child once before, he said. Now she is teaching Harper to do the same. The words landed harder than the suitcase had. Harper turned toward me. Dad knew about this? I should have answered immediately. I should have told her that her father had never abandoned Ruby, that he had only demanded time, independent advice, and a voice for his daughter. But 12 pairs of young eyes were fixed on us, and Caleb's parents were waiting for me to defend a dead man in the middle of a bowling alley. This is not the place, I said. I will tell you everything at home. Harper's face closed. So there is something to tell. Lorraine saw the damage my hesitation had done. She did not smile, but satisfaction moved through her posture. She reached into the suitcase, lifted a thin stack of papers from beneath the clothes, then placed them back. When you are ready to save someone in your family, read what is underneath, she told Harper. You need to leave now, Joel said. They walked out without the suitcase. Malcolm pushed the glass door open, and Lorraine paused just long enough to look back at Harper, as if leaving the bag behind were an act of mercy rather than another form of pressure. The music started again after they were gone, but no one returned to bowling. The candles had burned low enough for wax to slide onto the frosting. Harper blew them out without making a wish. I thanked the parents for coming and said there had been a family misunderstanding. I hated the phrase the moment it left my mouth, but it was the only one that did not turn Harper into a story they could repeat in school parking lots. I packed the untouched cake while Harper changed her shoes in silence. On the drive home, she held Caleb's photograph against her chest. The silver suitcase stayed in the trunk because neither of us wanted it beside us. Every red light gave me another chance to begin explaining, yet each time I looked at Harper, I saw how completely my silence at the bowling alley had changed the question. She was no longer wondering why her grandparents had come. She was wondering what her father and I had hidden from her. At home, I carried the suitcase into the kitchen and set it on the tile. Harper opened it again before I could ask her to wait. She removed the slippers, sweatpants, booklet, and wristband one item at a time. At the bottom, beneath the papers Lorraine had pointed out, she found a prepaid hotel envelope and a printed schedule with a torn adhesive strip along its top edge, as if it had come loose from beneath the lid. The first appointment began at 7 the next morning. Below it were lines for registration, laboratory testing, donor education, and something labeled guardian orientation. My name had been typed beside that last entry, even though no one had called me, asked my permission, or even confirmed that I knew Ruby was sick. Harper looked at the 2 hotel nights, then at the schedule, and finally at me. How long did they think I was going to be gone? I stared at the words guardian orientation and understood what Lorraine and Malcolm had tried to do. They had not needed my consent to be real. They had only needed the paperwork to look finished long enough for Harper to believe resistance was already too late. I did not answer Harper's question right away. The printed schedule lay between us on the kitchen table, its boxes and time slots pretending that tomorrow had already been decided. Harper stood on the other side of the table with Caleb's photograph pressed against her sweatshirt. The silver suitcase remained open at her feet, full of things selected by people who could not have named the brand of her inhaler or the cereal she ate when grief made everything else taste wrong. How long did they think I was going to be gone? She asked again. 2 nights. According to the hotel envelope, I said. But they did not have the right to plan even 1 hour of your life without asking. Her eyes stayed on me. That is not what I asked. I knew what she meant. She wanted to know how much I had known before Lorraine opened that suitcase. More than that, she wanted to know whether every missing birthday card had been hiding a reason I had chosen not to tell her. I pulled out the chair across from her, but did not ask her to sit. There's something I should have told you years ago. Harper's fingers tightened around the frame. I first met her in the summer of 2018, when she was 5 and still corrected anyone who folded her mother's sweaters the wrong way. Lena had been gone for a year. Caleb never presented me as someone who would fill the space she had left, and I never tried. Lena remained in photographs along the hallway, and in the birthday pancakes she used to make with too many chocolate chips. I learned which songs had belonged to the two of them, and which stories Harper wanted told exactly the way Caleb told them. When Harper asked if Lena had liked thunderstorms, I did not invent an answer. I asked Caleb, and later we wrote down the things he was afraid memory might lose. When Caleb and I married in June of 2020, Harper did not call me Mom. I did not ask her to. We built our relationship through smaller things. I learned to braid her hair badly enough that she eventually took the brush from me and taught me. I waited outside the school nurse's office during her first asthma scare because she wanted Caleb inside, but still wanted to know I had stayed. I studied bowling rules after confidently celebrating the wrong score. I learned that on the hardest anniversaries she did not want dinner, only buttered toast cut into 4 squares. None of those moments gave me ownership of her. They gave me responsibility. Caleb's parents were polite to me in those early years. Lorraine complimented my cooking while reminding me that Harper had Lena's smile. She called blood the one thing life cannot replace, often enough that the sentence stopped sounding accidental. Malcolm rarely said anything so direct. He simply corrected me when I called Harper our daughter, as though grammar could keep every relationship in its proper box. Then Ruby became sick in 2021. Harper looked up sharply at the name. She was 5, I said. She had leukemia. Your grandparents called your dad and wanted you taken in for tissue testing that weekend. Harper's face went still in the way it did when the emotion was too large to show all at once. Did Dad say no? He did not say never. He said you were 7 years old. He said someone had to explain what testing meant in words you could understand, and that there had to be someone whose only job was protecting your interests. He said no one was allowed to promise your body for you. I could still see Caleb at our old kitchen counter, one hand gripping the phone, the other pressed flat against the laminate. Lorraine's voice had been loud enough for me to hear from across the room. Your niece is sick. This is what family does. Caleb had kept his voice low. Then ask Harper. Do not announce what she will do before she knows what you are asking. Malcolm took the phone and called those conditions selfish delay. Lorraine said I had taught Caleb to treat his own family like strangers. She spoke about Ruby's fear, Celia's exhaustion, and the shame Caleb would carry if anything happened while he was hiding behind procedure. Caleb ended the call before they could turn Harper into an argument happening around her. Afterward, he stood by the sink for a long time. Then he told me, they do not want to ask her. They want to make the question sound like an order. A few weeks later, Ruby's doctors changed the direction of her treatment. The urgent request for family testing stopped. Caleb and I told ourselves that meant we had time to decide how much Harper needed to know. What we really meant was that we did not want to be the people who told a 7-year-old her grandparents had looked at her and seen a possible medical resource. Lorraine and Malcolm stopped calling. They missed birthdays. They sent no Christmas gifts and no notes when Harper won her first science fair ribbon. Whenever she asked why, I said they were going through something difficult. It was not a complete lie. It was worse than that. It was a partial truth that left Harper alone to invent the missing part. She lowered Caleb's photograph to the table. I thought they did not want me because I reminded them of Mom. My throat tightened. Then I thought maybe they blamed me because Dad chose you, she continued. After he died, I thought they would come. When they didn't, I figured they had decided I was not enough of him. I reached toward her, then stopped before touching her arm. Harper, none of that was true. You let me believe it. There was no defense that would not make the injury about my intentions. I had wanted to protect her. Caleb had wanted to wait until the danger and guilt were no longer pressing against her. But each year of silence had taught her a story about herself, and it had been crueler than the truth. You are right, I said. I should have told you when you were old enough to understand. I kept waiting for a version of the truth that would not hurt you. Her eyes filled, but she did not look away. So you gave me no truth. The words stayed between us. Caleb had once suggested that I adopt Harper. He brought it up gently after we had been married for 2 years, not because he doubted my place in her life, but because he wanted the law to reflect who would care for her if something happened to him. Harper had panicked. She thought adoption meant Lena's name would disappear from her birth certificate, and that accepting me as a legal mother would betray the mother she barely remembered. Caleb and I told her we would not force a permanent decision to soothe our own fears. Then, on the 18th of December 2024, a winter collision on the highway took Caleb from us, before we had found another ordinary afternoon to discuss it. After the funeral, I filed a petition in Franklin County Probate Court to become Harper's guardian of the person. There were forms, a background check, a home assessment, and questions Harper was old enough to answer for herself. Notice went to her known next of kin, including Lorraine and Malcolm. They knew? Harper asked. They received notice. They did not object. In March of last year, the court appointed me to care for you and make legal decisions for you. They had the chance to speak, and they stayed silent. Harper looked down at the donor booklet. Until Ruby got sick again. I nodded. Her anger did not disappear, but its direction changed. Some of it belonged to Lorraine and Malcolm. Some belonged to Caleb for waiting. A part of it belonged to me because I had mistaken silence for shelter. She turned the white wristband over in her hand. Did Dad think my body needed protection from them? He thought your choice did. Harper set the wristband down. I picked up my phone, found the transplant center number printed at the bottom of the schedule, and pressed call. The transplant center answered after 3 rings. A woman introduced herself as a scheduling coordinator and asked for Harper's date of birth. I looked across the kitchen table. Harper had folded her arms over Caleb's photograph, watching me as if the next words out of my mouth would prove whether I had understood anything she had just said. I'm not authorizing treatment or providing medical information, I said. I need to know whether your center has an appointment tomorrow morning under the name Harper Cole. The coordinator paused. Are you Harper's parent or legal guardian? I'm her court-appointed guardian of the person. She asked me to hold while she checked the scheduling system. Harper stared at the printed itinerary as though each cheerful note made it more official. When the coordinator returned, her voice had changed. There is no patient or donor record under that name, she said. There is no donor evaluation scheduled for tomorrow. I looked at the 7 o'clock registration time printed beneath the center's address. Could someone have arranged it without entering her into your system yet? Not in the way you're describing. A grandparent cannot independently schedule a minor for donor testing. We would need a medical referral and an authorized process before an evaluation could begin. Harper slowly released the breath she had been holding. I described the white wristband, the donor booklet, and the printed schedule without reading any of Harper's private medical history. The coordinator asked whether the documents carried a hospital logo, medical record number, appointment confirmation number, or the name of a transplant physician. They did not. She transferred me to the center's psychosocial and ethics team. Dr. Anika Shah introduced herself as a pediatric psychologist who worked with families during donor evaluations. This is not an official donor consultation, she said. Harper has not been referred to us, and no donor case has been opened in her name. I can only explain what a legitimate process would generally involve. I put the call on speaker after Harper nodded. Dr. Shah explained that a minor would never simply arrive, have blood drawn, and become a donor because relatives had decided it was necessary. There would first have to be a medical reason to consider that child. The hospital would evaluate physical risk, emotional readiness, and the circumstances surrounding the request. My permission as Harper's guardian would matter, but the process would not treat Harper as an object I could sign over. At 13, she would be included in conversations appropriate to her age, Dr. Shah said. The team would need to understand what she believes is happening, whether she feels pressured, and whether she can speak freely. Someone focused on the potential donor's welfare should be separate from the family member receiving treatment. Harper touched the edge of the fake wristband. What happens if the kid says no? No one should punish a child for expressing fear, uncertainty, or refusal, Dr. Shaw said. A real evaluation is meant to identify pressure, not reward the family members applying it. She did not promise that a child's answer automatically controlled every legal or medical question. She did not declare Harper eligible or ineligible. She simply described a process that bore no resemblance to the suitcase on our floor. Before ending the call, she advised me to preserve the materials and contact our attorney. She also offered a future informational meeting if Harper wanted one, while emphasizing again that it would not open a donor case. After we hung up, I photographed the suitcase exactly as Lorraine and Malcolm had packed it. I took wide pictures, then close-ups of the booklet, wristband, hotel envelope, and schedule. I documented the order of every item before placing them back. Harper watched me from the doorway. "Are you keeping it in here?" she asked. "No. You shouldn't have to see it every time you get a glass of water." I closed the suitcase and carried it to the locked storage closet beside the laundry room. It was still evidence, but it no longer had the right to occupy our kitchen. Claudia Reyes answered my call from her home office. She had handled my guardianship petition after Caleb died, and she remembered Lorraine and Malcolm's silence when the court notified them. I sent her the photographs while explaining what had happened at the bowling alley and what the transplant center had confirmed. "They cannot take Harper anywhere," Claudia said. "Being Caleb's parents does not make them her guardians, and they cannot represent you to a hospital." "Can they challenge me?" "They may ask the court for visitation as the parents of a deceased father. They could also file a separate motion in the probate case, asking that you be removed as guardian. Those are different proceedings, and neither gives them permission to collect Harper from school or place her into a medical process while they wait." The distinction mattered because Lorraine had designed the schedule to create the opposite impression. She wanted Harper to believe the decision had already been made, and that resistance would only delay Ruby's care. Claudia told me to save every message, avoid arguments by phone, and update Harper's school immediately. I logged into the parent portal and removed every outdated emergency contact, except the two people Harper and I trusted. Then I emailed the principal, attached the guardianship order, and asked that no one release Harper without direct confirmation from me. The first family message arrived before I finished. An aunt of Caleb's wrote that she had heard Ruby was dying and that I was refusing to let Harper help. A cousin asked whether I understood what it would mean to live with that decision. Another relative used Lorraine's exact phrase and accused me of teaching Harper that family obligations disappeared when they became inconvenient. None of them posted publicly. They did not need strangers. They only needed enough relatives repeating the same accusation until Harper felt surrounded by it. I silenced my phone and set it face down. It rang again almost immediately. This time, Harper saw the name and picked it up before I could stop her. Her great-aunt began speaking without asking whether Harper wanted the conversation. "Sweetheart, I know Adrian is frightened, but Ruby is a little girl. Wouldn't you feel terrible if something happened because you refused to be tested?" I took the phone from Harper's hand. "You will not put that on her," I said. "Do not call again." I ended the call and blocked the number. For one sharp second, I felt relieved. I had protected Harper before the woman could say anything worse. Then I saw Harper's face. "You did it again," she said. My hand tightened around the phone. "She was trying to make you responsible for Ruby's life. I know what she was doing. I was listening. I wasn't going to let her corner you. So you cornered me from the other side." The words stopped me. I had taken her voice because I believed I would use it more safely. Lorraine had done the same thing for a crueler purpose, but Harper had still ended up between two adults deciding what she was allowed to say. "You're right," I said. "I should have asked what you wanted me to do." Her anger did not vanish, but she looked surprised that I had not defended myself. "What do you want to do with the phone?" I asked. "We can block everyone. We can save the messages without reading them. You can answer with me beside you, or you can answer no one." Harper considered the choices. "Turn it off tonight, but tomorrow, I want to see what they sent, even if it hurts. Yes, you don't get to decide that not knowing hurts less. I switched the phone off and placed it on the table. Then we made 2 rules. I would not promise Harper's body, answer emotional questions for her, or make commitments in her name. Harper would not agree to testing, meetings, or medical requests until she had accurate information and access to someone independent of the family asking her to help. The rules did not repair everything I had hidden. They gave us a place to begin speaking from. I called Celia 3 times that evening. The first call went to voicemail. The second rang until the line disconnected. On the third, I left a message saying only that her parents had appeared with a suitcase and claimed Harper was needed for Ruby. I did not accuse her. I asked her to call me before anyone contacted Harper again. Near midnight, my phone lit up beside the bed. Celia had left a voicemail. Her voice was shaking, but there was no plea in it. There was only anger. Do not let my parents take Harper anywhere. I never sent them. Before I went back to bed, I sent Celia the same photographs of the suitcase and its contents that I had preserved for Claudia. She called again before I could return her voicemail. Ruby was asleep in the hospital, and Celia spoke from an empty family lounge with the lights dimmed behind her. Her face looked thinner than I remembered from Caleb's funeral. She had pulled her hair into a loose knot, and there were dark half-moons beneath her eyes. I need you to believe me, she said. I did not ask them to go to Harper's birthday. I kept my voice low so I would not wake Harper upstairs. They had Ruby's name, a hotel reservation, and a schedule for donor testing. I know what they had. I saw the pictures you sent. You saw them after they frightened my daughter in front of 12 children. Celia closed her eyes. I know. I did not make it easier for her. For years, Lorraine and Malcolm had told Harper that silence was what she deserved. Now Celia wanted me to separate her from the people who had carried out that silence, and I was not ready to do it just because she sounded exhausted. What is happening with Ruby? I asked. Celia looked toward the door before answering, as though saying the details aloud might invite them back into the room. Her leukemia came back. Acute myeloid leukemia. They started reinduction treatment to try to get her into remission again. She explained that Ruby could not simply be moved into a transplant because a calendar demanded it. The doctors first had to see whether the treatment worked, control an infection that had already delayed 1 procedure, and complete every evaluation required before conditioning could begin. There is no transplant date, Celia said. There cannot be one yet. I thought of the printed schedule in our locked closet. Lorraine had assigned Harper a 7 o'clock registration time for a process the actual doctors had not even opened. Is Harper a match? I asked. She has never been tested. Then why did your parents call her Ruby's only hope? She isn't. The answer came so quickly that I almost thought I had misheard. Celia leaned closer to the screen. The registry search found an adult donor who looks promising. They passed the first review and are waiting on confirmatory HLA testing and the rest of the medical workup. Nothing is guaranteed, but the team has a real option in progress. Did your parents know that? Yes. The anger that moved through me was colder than what I had felt at the bowling alley. Lorraine and Malcolm had not acted because every medical door had closed. They had walked past an adult volunteer already undergoing evaluation because they preferred a story in which blood relatives proved their loyalty through sacrifice. I told them not to contact Harper. Celia continued. I said we would follow the transplant team's process. If the doctors ever believed another family member needed to be considered, it would happen through the hospital, with someone protecting the donor's interests. And Lorraine disagreed. She said taking cells from a stranger was an insult when family blood was available. I looked toward the ceiling. Harper's bedroom floor creaked faintly above me. Your mother did not bring that argument to me, I said. She brought a suitcase. Celia pressed her hand over her mouth. When she lowered it, her voice had changed. I thought they were only angry. They kept saying I was letting strangers make decisions that belonged to us. I stopped taking their calls 2 days ago. I had no idea they printed documents or booked a hotel. I wanted to believe her, but belief had become expensive. What did they tell you about Caleb in 2021? Celia did not answer immediately. They said he refused to have Harper tested, she said at last. They said he would not even discuss it because you convinced him that Ruby was not his responsibility. He did not refuse Ruby, I said. He refused to let anyone promise Harper before she understood what was being asked. Celia's expression tightened, and for 1 second I saw Lorraine in the angle of her mouth. Caleb knew my daughter was sick, she said. I was watching Ruby lose weight and sleep through entire days. Then I heard my brother was asking for meetings and advocates while we were running out of time. I was angry. Then read what he actually sent you. Celia looked away from the screen. Those are not the words my parents gave me. She did not accuse me of lying, but she did not accept my version simply because I spoke with certainty. I respected her more for that than I expected. I need to check something, she said. Caleb texted me after that call. I stopped reading his messages because everyone felt like another delay. The call ended without forgiveness, agreement, or a promise that we would speak again. The next afternoon, Celia came to the library after closing. Harper stayed home with our neighbor, and I let Celia in through the staff entrance. We sat at a table in the children's section beneath paper planets left from the summer reading program. She placed her phone between us. I found the messages. The thread began with anger from both sides. Celia had accused Caleb of hiding behind rules while Ruby suffered. Caleb had written that fear did not give adults permission to decide for a child. Then came the message Celia had once interpreted as abandonment. I will not bring Harper in until someone explains this to her. Someone independent is assigned to protect her, and she understands she can say no. If the doctors still believe testing is appropriate after that, we will listen. Nothing in it promised that Harper would be tested. Nothing refused to consider it. It only placed Harper's understanding before the family's urgency. My parents kept saying the first sentence, Celia whispered. They never repeated the rest. She scrolled farther. Caleb had sent 2 more messages asking how Ruby was doing. Celia had never answered. I let him die, thinking I believed the worst thing they said about him. I could not tell her Caleb had not cared. He had. Even after he stopped calling his parents, he kept Ruby's school picture in a drawer beside Harper's asthma records. He had asked me more than once whether silence was protecting Harper or simply making every path back harder. Celia wiped her face with both hands. I am not angry because Harper is no longer available to us. She was never ours to claim. I am angry because they turned his protection into betrayal, and I helped them do it. Our neighbor brought Harper to the library at the time we had agreed. I met her near the staff entrance and did not bring her into the room immediately. I told her Celia was there. I explained that Ruby was sick, that an adult donor was already being evaluated, and that Celia had not sent Lorraine and Malcolm to her birthday. You do not have to see her, I said. Harper looked through the glass panel in the children's room door. Does she want me to get tested? She says she does not. That is not what I asked. I understood. You can ask her yourself. Harper entered and sat across from Celia. Neither of them reached for the other. Celia spoke first. I am sorry my daughter's name was used to scare you. Ruby did not ask for that, and neither did I. Harper studied her for a moment. What does Ruby like when she is not in the hospital? The question startled all 3 of us. Stars, Celia said. She can find constellations faster than I can. She also hates the banana pudding they serve here, and hides it behind her water pitcher so the nurses think she ate it. A small smile appeared on Harper's face. It was not forgiveness or commitment. It was curiosity about a child she had only known as a medical emergency. Could I meet her? Harper asked. Celia did not answer until she looked at me. I can ask the support team about a video call, she said. Only if Harper wants it. My parents will not be there. No, I said before I could stop myself. Harper turned toward me. I saw every reason behind my answer. Lorraine's suitcase, the family messages, The possibility that one conversation with Ruby would place a new kind of guilt on Harper's shoulders. Then Harper repeated the rule I had made only the night before. You said this was supposed to be my choice. I changed my answer before Harper had time to ask again. You're right, I said. I reacted because I was afraid. If you still want to meet Ruby, we'll arrange it in a way that protects both of you. Harper did not thank me. She looked at Celia through the glass door of the children's room, then back at me. No grandparents, she said. No grandparents, Celia agreed. Ruby's immune system was too vulnerable for visitors, so Celia asked a family support coordinator at the hospital to arrange a private video call. Before it happened, Harper accepted Dr. Anika Shah's offer of an informational meeting. It was not a donor evaluation. No medical file would be opened, and no blood would be drawn. The purpose was only to give Harper accurate information, without Lorraine, Malcolm, Celia, or me shaping it for her. 3 days later, I sat outside Dr. Shah's office, with my hands wrapped around a cup of coffee I never drank. Harper had asked me to wait in the hallway. I respected that, although every protective instinct in me wanted to hear each question and make sure no answer frightened her. The closed door forced me to confront the difference between standing nearby and standing over her. When the meeting ended, Dr. Shah came out with Harper beside her. She has received the basic information she requested. Dr. Shah told me. No donor evaluation has been opened, and today's conversation did not create any obligation or medical commitment. She did not tell me what Harper had asked. She did not summarize Harper's feelings or hand me conclusions that belonged to my daughter. She simply reminded us that Harper could request another informational conversation later. We walked to a quiet family room where the video call with Ruby would begin. Harper carried her rescue inhaler in the pocket of her jacket, and Caleb's photograph inside her backpack, although she had not told me why she brought it. Before we entered, she stopped beside a vending machine. Dr. Shah said testing, evaluation, and donating are 3 different things, she said. People keep talking like the first step means I already agreed to the last one. What did she say you could answer? Harper counted on her fingers. No, I don't know. I need more time. She said those are all real answers. I nodded. They are. She also said guilt can make something feel like a choice when it isn't one. The vending machine hummed between us. What scares you most? I asked. Harper looked toward the family room door. Not needles. I waited. I'm scared Ruby could die, she said. Then everyone would think there was something wrong with me because I didn't do whatever they wanted. There it was. The fear I had been trying to remove without allowing her to name it. Harper had not been asking only whether she could refuse. She was asking whether she would still deserve love after refusing. A decision made because you're afraid people will hate you isn't much of a decision, she said. That sounds true. It still doesn't tell me what to do. It isn't supposed to. She studied my face as if checking for disappointment. I kept my expression still, not because I felt nothing, but because I did not want her searching me for the answer that would make me easiest to live with. Inside the family room, a coordinator checked the connection and then stepped outside. Celia appeared first on the screen. She wore a hospital visitor badge and sat in a small consultation room away from Ruby's bed. A moment later, Ruby slid into the chair beside her, wearing a knitted blue cap covered in silver stars. She looked younger than 10 and more irritated than sick. Are you Harper? She asked. Yes. Mom said you like space. I build models, mostly planets and satellites. I like constellations because people made pictures out of dots before they knew what the dots were. Harper smiled. My dad said humans hate empty spaces, so we connect things even when we're guessing. Ruby glanced at Celia. Everyone here keeps asking if I'm hurting. Even when I say no, they ask again with a sadder face. Celia looked apologetic. We are working on that. The banana pudding hurts me, Ruby said. But no one wants to discuss that emergency. Harper laughed, and some of the tension left her shoulders. They compared hospital food with school cafeteria food. Ruby described the plastic stars a nurse had stuck across her ceiling. Harper promised to send her a link to a podcast about how sailors navigated before modern instruments. For several minutes, neither child mentioned donors, blood, or responsibility. They were simply two cousins meeting for the first time, without adults deciding what the conversation had to accomplish. Then Ruby said, "Grandma told me you were already ready to do everything." Harper stopped smiling. Celia's hand moved toward Ruby, but she did not interrupt. "What did she say exactly?" Harper asked. "She said family always comes through in the end. She said you just needed your stepmother to stop being afraid." My stomach tightened, but Harper did not look at me. "I haven't decided anything," she said. "There isn't even an official request for me." Ruby picked at the edge of her sleeve. "I know that now. Were you waiting for me?" "I was waiting for the doctors to tell us what happens next." Ruby looked directly into the camera. "I don't want you to do something because you're scared of me dying." The simplicity of it silenced every adult in the room. Harper leaned closer to the screen. "I don't want you to think I don't care. I don't. You barely know me." Ruby shrugged. "You barely know me too, and Grandma still told you that you had to save me." Celia closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, there were tears there. But she let the girls continue. Ruby asked if Harper would show her the model she was building. Harper pulled out her phone and found pictures of a small wooden observatory she had been painting in Caleb's old colors. Ruby said the roof looked crooked. Harper told her it was supposed to open. By the end of the call, they had agreed to exchange one space fact every Friday through Celia. Nothing medical, no promises, just one fact each. After Ruby signed off, Harper sat staring at the blank screen. "You don't have to decide anything today," I said. "I know." I almost told her I was proud of her for not volunteering, but I stopped myself. Praising one answer too eagerly could become another way of guiding her toward the choice I wanted. Instead, I asked, "How do you feel?" "Like Ruby is a person now," she said. "Not a reason everyone is mad at me." Harper had been signed out of school that morning for Dr. Shaw's appointment and the hospital call, and the office had the documentation. On the way home, she read me 3 possible facts for Friday, and rejected all of them for being too obvious. She had just settled on one about a planet where glass might fall sideways when my phone rang through the car speakers. The caller was the principal's office. "Miss Cole," the secretary said, "Harper's grandfather is here. He says there is a medical emergency in the family, and that he has authorization to take her as soon as she returns." Harper stopped speaking. The secretary continued before I could respond. "We told him Harper was signed out by her guardian. He demanded to know where she is, and when she will be back. We have not given him that information, and security is with him now." I took the next safe turn and headed toward the school. Harper pulled the seatbelt tighter across her chest. The family support center was less than 15 minutes behind us, but the calm we had built there already felt far away. "What happens if the school believes him before they believe you?" she asked. "The school already believed the documents we gave them," I said as I turned into the parking lot. "That is why they called me instead of telling him where you were or when you would return." Harper looked toward the front entrance. A security officer stood beside the glass doors, while Malcolm waited at the far edge of the parking lot with a folder beneath one arm, as if an administrative error would soon be corrected. I parked near the office and told Harper to stay in the locked car until I knew it was safe. She shook her head. "He came for me," she said. "I want to hear what he tells you." I remembered my promise and asked the principal to bring Harper through a side door. Once she was inside the secure office, I met with the principal, resource officer, and security employee. He had arrived carrying a copy of Caleb's birth certificate and several family photographs. He said there was a medical emergency and described himself as Harper's grandfather, as though that title gave him legal authority. When the secretary checked the pickup list, his name was not there. She told him Harper had been signed out by me and was not on campus, but he demanded her location and the time she would return. The resource officer had asked whether he possessed a court order, guardianship document, or written authorization from me. Malcolm had none. He stayed calm, the officer said. He did not threaten anyone or force his way past us. We told him to leave and documented the incident, but there was no basis to arrest him. Malcolm did not need to shout. He brought enough paper to make people hesitate before saying no. The principal handed me a copy of the incident report and confirmed that the school would neither disclose Harper's location nor release her to anyone outside the approved list. I thanked her, then went outside. Malcolm was still waiting beyond the edge of school property. He opened his car door when he saw me, but he did not get inside. "You made a family emergency into a police matter," he said. "You came to a child's school and claimed authority you do not have. I brought proof that I am her grandfather. You brought proof that Caleb was your son. That does not make you Harper's guardian." His expression hardened at Caleb's name. "The adult donor failed confirmatory testing. Ruby has no one else." Harper watched from the office window. Arguing would only let Malcolm dismiss me as emotional and return to his prepared speech. Instead, I asked, "What is the name of the transplant physician who told you the donor failed?" He hesitated. "What is Ruby's transplant case number? Who authorized Harper's appointment? Which donor coordinator asked you to bring her?" "You are hiding behind technicalities while a child is dying." "Those are not technicalities. They are the names of the people who would exist if anything you printed were real." Malcolm glanced toward the school windows. "Think like a mother, Adrian. If Harper were sick, would you let a stranger's uncertainty decide whether she lived?" The question struck where he intended. I imagined Harper in Ruby's hospital bed and a volunteer changing their mind. Then I saw her behind the glass, listening to a man turn another child's illness into a command for her body. "If I were Ruby's mother," I said, "I would want the truth. You have not given anyone that." Malcolm's voice dropped. "When that stranger walks away, Harper will have to live with what she refused." I stepped back from him. "Do not come to her school again." He did not follow me when I returned inside. The resource officer remained near the entrance until Malcolm finally drove away. Harper sat in the principal's office with her backpack against her knees. "Did the donor really fail?" she asked. He could not name the doctor who supposedly told him. "That does not mean it is not true." She was right. Malcolm had planted enough uncertainty to make every hour feel dangerous. I called Celia before we left the office. She answered from Ruby's hospital room and moved into the hallway when she heard my voice. "The donor has not failed," she said. "One confirmatory test produced an unclear technical result. The lab is repeating it. The donor has not been ruled out." Harper closed her eyes. Relief moved across her face, followed immediately by shame. "I'm glad," she whispered. "That feels horrible." Celia heard her. "It is not horrible to be relieved that someone else may be able to help my daughter." Harper did not answer, but her shoulders lowered slightly. By the time we reached home, Claudia had the school report, Malcolm's statements, the fake schedule, and the relatives' messages. After speaking privately with Harper, Dr. School and of Dr. Shaw documented, with her permission, poor sleep, anxiety around unknown numbers, and fear of being removed from school as signs of distress associated with coercive pressure. She made no legal conclusion. The transplant center put its earlier confirmation in writing. No official referral, donor record, or physician request involving Harper existed. Claudia explained that she was preparing a petition for a civil stalking protection order based on the pattern that had developed: the birthday confrontation, the fabricated medical itinerary, pressure through relatives, and Malcolm's arrival at the school. "Filing does not mean a judge automatically grants an emergency order," she warned. "We have to show a pattern of conduct and the mental distress it caused. We will request a full hearing. Until a court acts, continue documenting everything and call law enforcement if they appear again or attempt to take Harper." I looked at the closed closet where the suitcase waited. What if the court thinks this is only a family disagreement? then we show that family disagreement does not explain false medical documents or an unauthorized attempt to remove a child from school. My employer's voluntary legal services plan covered the initial filing work. Anything beyond it would come from the emergency fund beside our mortgage payments. We had no hidden wealth, only enough to keep legal cost from becoming another weapon against us. After the calls ended, Harper sat on the living room floor with her back against the sofa. I joined her rather than asking her to come to the table. "I need to tell you something I am not proud of," I said. "I am afraid of your choice too." She looked at me. "If you decide you want to learn more about testing, I am afraid I will fail to protect you. If you decide you do not want any part of it, I am afraid you will blame yourself if Ruby gets worse. So you want me to choose the answer that scares you less?" I have been trying not to, but part of me does. Harper pulled her knees closer. "I do not need you to like my answer. I know. I need to know. No one is going to punish me for it. Not Grandma, not Grandpa, not you." I let the words settle before answering. "They will not get permission to punish you, and I will not turn fear into punishment either." Later that afternoon, the ethics office documented that no donor evaluation would begin without a legitimate referral. Any future request involving Harper would require review of the reported coercion, while the adult donor remained in confirmatory testing. This was hospital process, not one psychologist's ruling. Harper listened beside me. When the call ended, she rested her head against the sofa and released a breath. Then her eyes filled. "I'm relieved. They said no," she whispered. "I hate that I'm relieved." I sat beside her without correcting either feeling. That evening, an unfamiliar number left a voicemail on Harper's phone. Lorraine's voice came through calm and almost tender. "When Ruby asks why you let a stranger save her, remember that strangers can walk away." Harper held the phone for several seconds before handing it to me. I saved the recording, sent a copy to Claudia, and did not delete it. The next morning, Claudia filed the protection order petition and requested a full hearing. She reminded us that no emergency order had been granted yet. Harper had barely slept. She stood in the kitchen in Caleb's old sweatshirt, staring at the dark screen of her phone. "Is Grandma right about one thing?" she asked. "Can the adult donor still walk away?" "Yes," I told Harper. "An adult donor can still change their mind before the procedure." Her face tightened. "But that does not make you the backup plan," I continued. "It means the doctors keep evaluating every safe option. No one gets to turn uncertainty into permission to pressure you." Harper looked at the phone Lorraine had called. "What if they walk away at the last minute? I do not know what the transplant team would do next. I only know your grandparents lied when they said there was no one else." The honest answer frightened her more than a promise would have, but she nodded. We had agreed that uncertainty would no longer be filled with whatever story made the adults feel most powerful. Celia called that afternoon from Ruby's hospital room. Ruby had developed a neutropenic fever during reinduction treatment, and doctors had found an infection that required intravenous antibiotics. The treatment plan had not collapsed, but everything depended on controlling the infection and seeing whether the chemotherapy brought Ruby into remission again. Celia looked as if she had not slept since our last conversation. "I hate waiting," she admitted. "I understand why my parents want to force everything into a straight line. Test Harper, find a match, schedule the transplant, save Ruby. When you are terrified, action feels like control. That does not make it control." "No, it only makes it movement." She glanced toward Ruby's bed. "Some days I can understand the fear that made them start. Then I remember the suitcase, and I cannot understand what they became. We were not friends. Too many years and too much damage stood between us for that word to mean anything yet. We trusted each other in smaller ways." Celia told me what Ruby's doctors had actually said, and I did not turn medical uncertainty into an accusation. I told her what Harper wanted shared, and I did not offer access to parts of Harper's life that were not mine to give. The girls continued sending each other messages through us. Harper recorded the sound of bowling pins and challenged Ruby to guess how many she had knocked down. She sent a short explanation of why Mars had blue sunsets and a riddle about a constellation that looked more like a crooked chair than a queen. Ruby answered from her hospital bed with complaints about the ceiling stars, which she said had been placed by someone who had never looked at the real sky. She sent Harper a drawing of Orion wearing a surgical mask and demanded proof that bowling shoes had to be ugly. Their relationship began to exist outside Ruby's illness. That mattered because Lorraine had introduced Ruby to Harper as a life-or-death obligation. The girls were slowly meeting each other as people. Then Claudia called to tell me Lorraine and Malcolm had filed 2 separate legal actions. The first was a complaint in the Court of Common Pleas, seeking grandparent visitation through Caleb, their deceased son. The second was a motion in the probate guardianship case, asking the court to remove me as Harper's guardian of the person. They are claiming you isolated Harper after Caleb died, Claudia said. They say you have interfered with her paternal family relationships and prevented her from helping a sick relative. Can they make Harper testify in front of them? That is not what either court wants. A guardian ad litem will be appointed for the visitation dispute and will speak with Harper privately. The probate judge can review the existing guardianship file, the school report, the medical materials, and professional documentation without turning this into a public loyalty test. The distinction did not make the petitions harmless. Lorraine and Malcolm were trying to convert their own absence into evidence against me. They had ignored the notice when I became Harper's guardian, then returned 2 years later claiming I had kept them away. The guardian ad litem, Evelyn Price, met Harper first without me in the room. I waited in the same courthouse hallway where I had once waited for the order naming me Harper's legal guardian. When Evelyn interviewed me afterward, she did not begin with the suitcase. Why did Harper not know about the 2021 conflict? She asked. I could have blamed Caleb. I could have said I was respecting his decision or protecting his daughter while we were grieving. Both statements contained some truth. I was afraid the truth would make Harper feel wanted only for what her body might provide, I said. I kept waiting until I could explain it without hurting her. In doing that, I left her to invent reasons her grandparents did not love her. Do you consider that a mistake? Yes. What changed? Harper told me that information about her life belongs to her too. I stopped deciding that ignorance was safer. She now has access to the messages, the medical explanations, and the legal process in language she understands. Evelyn made a note without telling me whether the answer helped or harmed me. That afternoon, Claudia received Celia's sworn statement. Celia confirmed that she had never asked her parents to approach Harper, arrange testing, collect her from school, or represent her family to the transplant center. She also stated that she opposed any donor process based on coercion. The transplant center's letter confirmed that its earlier account had not changed. The adult donor remained in the evaluation process, and no official medical request involving Harper existed. There was no single document that destroyed Lorraine and Malcolm's story. Their version failed because none of its pieces connected. They said Celia had sent them, but Celia denied it. They said the hospital expected Harper, but the hospital had no record of her. They said the adult donor had failed, but the donor remained under evaluation. They said I had isolated Harper, but the school report showed Malcolm had tried to remove her without authorization. They said their only purpose was saving Ruby, yet their actions had ignored the very medical team treating her. The more official questions people asked, the less their story resembled reality. That evening, Harper sat at the kitchen table assembling another recording for Ruby. She had just described Jupiter's storms when a new message arrived from Celia. Ruby's voice sounded tired. I know Grandma said you were supposed to save me. I did not ask them to make you scared for me. I do not want you to hear my name and feel afraid. Harper listened twice. Then she carried her phone to the locked storage closet and stood in front of the door. Celia said she wants a family meeting. After Ruby's infection is under control, she said. She wants it mediated, with a hospital support team and security nearby. You do not have to attend. I know. I waited for her to tell me what she wanted. Can I bring the suitcase? My stomach tightened. Why? Because they packed everything they wanted me to become. Harper looked at the closet door. I want to give it back. She was not asking permission to forgive them. She was not planning revenge. She had decided to face the people who had turned her body into a family obligation and return the future they had packed without her consent. The hospital family support team did not approve the meeting simply because Harper asked for it. A coordinator spoke with her privately, reviewed the incident at school, and made sure she understood that facing Lorraine and Malcolm would not change the medical process. We arrived through a side entrance. Security waited near the meeting room, and every adult signed rules, stating there would be no private contact, no following Harper afterward, and no attempt to remove her from the building. No court had issued a protection order yet. Claudia had filed the petition, but the full hearing was still ahead of us. That made the written safety plan the only boundary Lorraine and Malcolm had agreed to respect. Claudia reviewed the plan before I agreed to attend, and warned me not to discuss settlement, guardianship, or the pending petition. The meeting would end the moment Harper asked to leave. Harper carried the silver suitcase herself. I offered twice to take it. She refused both times. When we entered the meeting room, Celia was seated near a video screen. Dr. Shaw and a family support coordinator sat at the far end of the table. 2 empty chairs waited beside Lorraine and Malcolm's places. Lorraine arrived, wearing the same expression she used at the bowling alley, calm enough to imply that every objection had been an emotional delay. Malcolm carried a folder thick with printed articles about family donor matches. His papers did not contain a referral for Harper, an appointment confirmation, or a request from Ruby's transplant team. Lorraine looked at the suitcase and smiled faintly. I'm glad you brought it. Perhaps we can finally discuss this without an audience. Harper placed it on the table. I pulled out the chair beside her, but did not sit until she did. This meeting happened because Harper asked for the chance to speak, I said. Everyone will listen until she is finished. Malcolm opened his folder. There are important medical facts she may not understand. She will ask if she wants them, Dr. Shaw said. For now, Mr. Cole, the agreement is that Harper speaks first. Harper rested both hands on the suitcase latches. For several seconds, she did nothing. I stood behind her chair, close enough that she could reach me without having to look. Then she opened it. She lifted out the gray hospital slippers and set them in front of Lorraine. You packed shoes for a hospital, Harper said. You didn't pack the purple sneakers I wear almost every day. She removed the loose sweatpants. You packed clothes that would be easy for doctors. You didn't pack anything I chose. Next came the plain wristband and the donor information booklet. You printed a bracelet with my name, but it didn't come from a hospital. You packed a booklet thanking donors, but there wasn't one page asking whether I wanted to be one. Lorraine shifted in her chair. Those were only meant to help you understand. Harper took out the prepaid hotel envelope. You booked 2 nights away from home. You didn't put my mother's phone number anywhere. You didn't pack my inhaler. You didn't pack schoolwork. You didn't pack anything from my real life because you weren't planning for me. She looked across the table at both of them. You did not pack for me. You packed for the version of me that never said no. Lorraine's expression finally broke. You are 13, she said. You cannot possibly understand what it means to have the chance to save someone in your own family. Dr. Shaw did not answer for Harper. She turned to Lorraine. If Harper's informed answer were no, would you accept it? Lorraine pressed her lips together. A child cannot understand the consequences of refusing something this important. That was not the question, Celia said. Malcolm slid one of his printed charts across the table. There are obligations that do not depend on consent. Families survive because people do what is necessary. Harper did not touch the chart. Dr. Shaw asked, Necessary? According to whom? According to anyone who understands what blood means, Malcolm replied. The room became very still. They had finally said it without hiding behind Ruby's infection, donor statistics, or hospital language. Harper's body belonged to the family because they believed family need outweighed her right to decide. Celia closed the folder before Malcolm could pull out another page. The adult donor completed confirmatory HLA testing, she said. The initial medical clearance is complete. Lorraine turned toward her. Why didn't you tell us? Because you are no longer part of Ruby's medical decision-making. Celia explained that the transplant was not immediate. Ruby still needed to achieve a second remission, recover from the infection, and be cleared for conditioning. The donor could still face additional testing, and nothing about the procedure was guaranteed. For the first time since the meeting began, I expected Lorraine to show relief. Instead, she stared at Celia, as though she had announced another betrayal. You are willing to let a stranger's cells live inside your daughter. Celia's face went pale. The cells could save her life. They are not family. Celia leaned back slowly. Then this was never only about saving Ruby. Lorraine looked around the room and seemed to realize too late what she had admitted. The video screen lit up before she could repair it. Ruby appeared from her hospital room wearing the same star-covered cap she had worn when she first met Harper. A family support specialist had spoken with her beforehand, and Ruby knew she could end the call at any moment. Celia had told her only that the adults were discussing boundaries. She had not coached her or asked her to persuade anyone. Ruby's voice was quiet. I want the person who helps me to want to. Lorraine turned toward the screen. Sweetheart, you do not understand what your mother is risking. Ruby glanced at Celia. Mom told me the doctors found someone. A stranger, Lorraine said. Ruby looked confused. Does that make them less kind? No one answered. Celia moved closer to the screen. Ruby, you do not need to stay for the rest. I know. Ruby looked at Harper. You can still send me the space fact on Friday. I will, Harper said. Ruby gave a small wave, and the screen went dark. Celia faced her parents. From today forward, you will not receive Ruby's medical updates. You will not speak for me, and you will not come to the treatment floor unless I invite you. The hospital has been informed. Lorraine's eyes filled, but the tears did not soften her voice. You are cutting your own parents out while accepting a stranger into your child. I am removing the people who turned both girls into property. Harper reached into her backpack and took out Caleb's photograph. She placed it inside the suitcase, where she had put it at the bowling alley. Lorraine stared at her son's face. For a moment, Harper's fingers remained on the frame. Then she lifted it back out. She held the photograph against her chest and pushed the open suitcase across the table. You can keep everything else, she said. The suitcase stopped in front of Malcolm. He stood abruptly. This is not finished. We will continue the guardianship case, and a judge will hear what Adrian has done to this family. I stepped beside Harper. You may use the legal process available to you, I said. You may not use Harper as a medical procedure. Malcolm looked toward the security officer outside the glass panel, then closed the suitcase. Lorraine did not touch the handle. When the coordinator escorted them through the opposite hallway, neither of them took it. Harper remained beside me until the door closed. The coordinator photographed the closed case and tagged its contents for the incident record before releasing it back to me. Harper took the handle herself. She was not bringing their plan home. She was taking back the object they had used to carry it. She had not declared that I was her real mother. She had not needed to. When the room became dangerous, she stood beside the person who had protected her right to choose, instead of demanding that she choose correctly. We left through the side entrance with Celia and Dr. Shaw behind us. The autumn air felt colder than it had that morning. Harper's phone rang before we reached the car. The number was unfamiliar, but the voicemail transcription began with Lorraine's name. Harper looked at the screen, then at me. I did not reach for the phone. She pressed decline herself. A voicemail appeared seconds later. I took screenshots, saved the recording, and forwarded both to Claudia. The family support coordinator added the contact attempt to the incident note from the meeting. Harper slipped the phone into her pocket. This time, no one had answered for her. The courts did not settle everything in a single morning. Over the following weeks, our calendar filled with meetings that sounded as if they belonged to the same fight but did not. Claudia explained each one before we entered it. The Court of Common Pleas would consider Lorraine and Malcolm's request for visitation. The probate court would decide whether there was good cause to remove me as Harper's guardian. A separate full hearing would determine whether the pattern of unwanted contact justified a civil stalking protection order. Harper was not placed between two tables and asked to choose a family. No judge demanded that she call anyone mom. She spoke privately with Evelyn Price, the guardian ad litem, and only about the things she was comfortable sharing. The rest came from records created by adults who had assumed no one would compare them. There was the school incident report showing Malcolm had tried to collect her without authorization. There was the transplant center's written confirmation that Harper had never been referred or scheduled. Claudia submitted photographs of the fake wristband and itinerary, Lorraine's voicemail, the messages sent through relatives, and the incident note documenting her attempt to contact Harper immediately after the mediated meeting. Dr. Shaw did not tell the court what decision to make. With Harper's permission, she described the sleep disruption, anxiety around unfamiliar numbers, and fear of being removed from school that Harper had reported after the pressure began. She explained coercion in plain language and stopped there. The hardest interview was not with the judge. It was with the probate investigator assigned to review Lorraine and Malcolm's motion to remove me. He had read Evelyn's report, so he did not ask me to repeat every detail. He asked whether I still believed hiding the 2021 conflict had protected Harper. No, I said. It left her alone to invent a reason she was not loved, and I should have trusted her with the truth sooner. The answer did not destroy my guardianship. It became one of the reasons the investigator trusted the rest of what I said. Lorraine and Malcolm described every decision they made as necessary. I was the only adult in the record willing to name a mistake that had hurt Harper. The probate judge denied their motion. There was no good cause to remove me as guardian of Harper's person. The order noted that I had maintained her home, education, medical care, and emotional support after Caleb's death, while Lorraine and Malcolm had declined to object when they received notice of the guardianship petition. The visitation complaint was dismissed separately. The Common Pleas judge found that forced contact was not in Harper's best interest after the false medical documents, the school incident, and the refusal to respect her stated boundaries. At the full protection order hearing, Malcolm tried to reduce every event to a misunderstanding. The suitcase was educational material. The hotel was convenience. The school visit was concern. Lorraine's voicemail was a grandmother expressing fear. Claudia placed the events in order. A public confrontation at Harper's birthday. A fabricated medical schedule. Pressure through relatives. An attempt to collect her from school. Contact immediately after a supervised meeting. Each action had been presented as harmless alone. Together, they formed a pattern that had changed how Harper slept, answered her phone, and entered her own school. The court issued the Civil Stalking Protection Order. Lorraine and Malcolm were prohibited from contacting Harper directly, using other relatives to reach her, approaching her school, or appearing at medical locations connected to her care. The order did not erase their names from the family tree. It placed enforceable limits on what they could do with that relationship. The transplant center imposed its own narrower consequences. Its legal department sent written notice that Lorraine and Malcolm were not authorized representatives of the hospital, Celia or Ruby. Their access to the treatment floor was revoked, and any communication about Ruby had to go through Celia or the hospital's legal office. Celia removed them from Ruby's emergency contact list and refused to include them in medical conferences. Lorraine called other relatives and said Adrian had isolated both granddaughters. The story traveled less successfully this time. Celia told the family that the adult donor had completed final clearance and that her mother had continued pursuing Harper even after learning it. Not everyone apologized to me. Several people never spoke to us again. I did not need them to love me. I needed them to stop carrying Lorraine's lie from phone to phone, and eventually they did. Ruby reached a second remission after reinduction treatment, and the infection that had delayed her care came under control. The adult donor remained medically cleared. Only then did Ruby begin conditioning for the transplant. Celia never called it a rescue. She described the nausea, the isolation precautions, and the fear that came with destroying part of Ruby's immune system so the donor cells could have a chance to take hold. The cells came from an adult stranger who had been free to walk away and had chosen to stay. While Ruby was in conditioning, Harper and I sat on her bedroom floor sorting a box of family photographs. She held a picture of Lena at 26, laughing beside a lake with Harper asleep against her chest. "If I call you Mom," Harper said, "am I acting like she wasn't?" I put down the photograph in my hand. "Loving me does not take anything away from Lena," I said. "You do not have to erase one mother to make room for another." Harper traced the edge of Lena's picture. "I wish I remembered more. I have things I should have shared sooner." I brought her a blue folder I had kept in the top drawer of my desk. It held copies of Lena's recipes, names of childhood friends, notes Caleb had written about Harper's first years, medical history, photographs, and answers to questions I had once thought I was saving for the right time. There was no hidden will, secret recording, or message designed to solve our lives. It was simply information that belonged to Harper. "Nothing about you should be kept in a drawer because adults are afraid of explaining it," I said. She opened the folder and began with Lena's handwriting. 2 days later, Celia called to discuss Harper's first possible visit after the transplant. It would not happen until Ruby's doctors allowed it, and the hospital would decide what precautions were necessary. "Who will be coming with Harper?" Celia asked. Harper was beside me at the kitchen counter, arranging photographs for the folder. She answered before I did. "My mother is coming with me." She did not look at me for approval. Celia did not pause to make the sentence ceremonial. She simply said she would place my name on the approved visitor request. I kept my eyes on the photograph in my hand until I could trust my voice. Harper had not chosen me in a courtroom or against another woman. She had named me in an ordinary conversation because no one had demanded proof. That evening, Celia sent a message saying the donor cell infusion was complete. Ruby was stable, exhausted, and being watched closely while everyone waited to see whether the cells would engraft. No one used the word cured. Harper read the message twice. Then she looked toward the hallway closet where the silver suitcase had remained since the family meeting. "Do you think we can clean it?" she asked. 6 months after Ruby's transplant, the silver suitcase was still in our hallway closet. I had said yes when Harper asked if we could clean it, but she had not been ready to touch it. Cleaning it had been her idea. Choosing when had to be hers too. Ruby was recovering at home between hospital appointments, but no one spoke about her treatment as though it were finished. Her immune system was still fragile. Celia kept disinfectant by every doorway, checked visitors for the smallest symptom, and canceled plans without apology whenever Ruby's doctors told her to be cautious. Harper's first visit lasted 40 minutes. Both girls had been free of coughs, fevers, and other signs of infection. The medical team had approved the short contact, and Harper understood that a single sneeze could end the visit before it began. She brought a new deck of constellation cards and left every stuffed animal at home, because Celia had explained that Ruby's room needed to stay easy to clean. I watched Harper wash her hands for the full time the nurse had recommended, then repeat the process after touching the front door handle. Ruby met us in the living room, wearing a mask decorated with silver stars. Her hair had begun growing back in soft, uneven patches. She tired quickly, but she still argued that Orion looked more like a badly drawn shopping cart than a hunter. Harper sat several feet away and dealt the constellation cards onto the coffee table. Neither girl mentioned the transplant until Ruby asked whether Harper had ever learned the adult donor's name. "No," Harper said. "Did you?" "Not yet. Mom said there are rules." Harper nodded. "Do you think you'll want to meet them someday?" Ruby considered it. "Maybe. I want to say thank you, but I don't want them to think they have to become part of my life because they helped me." Harper glanced at me, then back at Ruby. "That makes sense." The conversation moved to school, bowling scores, and a science teacher Ruby disliked because he treated every wrong answer like a personal betrayal. Their relationship no longer depended on one girl needing something from the other. They were cousins building their own connection, one ordinary complaint at a time. Celia and I did not become sisters overnight. We still spoke carefully around the years when we had believed different versions of Caleb. Sometimes a sentence would expose an old wound neither of us was ready to examine. What changed was our agreement about the girls. Celia did not ask me to speak for Harper, and I did not question every decision she made for Ruby. We shared information when it affected both children. We asked before arranging calls. We allowed silence to mean not yet, instead of interpreting it as rejection. Lorraine and Malcolm remained outside those boundaries. The protection order prohibited them from contacting Harper, approaching her school, or using relatives to reach her. Celia continued withholding Ruby's medical information and had not restored their access to the treatment floor. They had tried to speak through the language of blood until both branches of the family stopped allowing them to speak for anyone else. Time had passed, but time alone did not earn forgiveness. The suitcase remained untouched until Harper received an acceptance email from a weekend astronomy program at a science center in northern Ohio. It would be her first overnight trip without me since Caleb died. The students would sleep in supervised dorm rooms, use the observatory after dark, and attend workshops on telescope imaging and planetary geology. Harper read the email twice before she smiled. Then the smile faded as she reached the section about what to pack. "We can buy you a new bag," I said. "Whatever kind you want." She looked toward the hallway. "I already have one." I followed her gaze. "You do not have to use it." "I know." That evening, Harper carried the silver suitcase into the kitchen and placed it on the same tile where she had opened it after her birthday. The fake wristband was still looped through the zipper of the inner pocket. The old schedule still carried its torn adhesive strip, and a faint residue remained beneath the lid where it had once been fixed. We worked slowly. Harper unfastened the wristband from the zipper and held it above the trash. "Should we keep it for the court records?" she asked. "Claudia has the photographs and copies. The original order is final." Harper dropped it. We fed the false schedule and hotel itinerary through the paper shredder. The machine pulled Lorraine and Malcolm's plans into thin, unreadable strips. Harper watched them fall into the bin. But she did not celebrate. Destroying paper could not erase what had happened. It only meant those papers no longer had a purpose in our home. I used rubbing alcohol to loosen the adhesive while Harper scrubbed the suitcase lining with a damp cloth. A faint mark remained on the lid. "It still looks used," she said. "It is used." She ran her finger over the mark. "That's okay." 2 days before the program, Harper packed by herself. She chose 2 shirts, jeans, pajamas, and a sweatshirt with a small embroidered telescope on the sleeve. She placed her inhaler in the front compartment beside a card containing her real medical information and my phone number. She packed a toothbrush, a deck of cards, her astronomy notebook, and a folding star map. In the side pocket, she placed a small card Ruby had drawn. The picture showed 2 crooked constellations connected by a dotted line, with their names written beneath them. I stood near the doorway and kept my hands to myself. Harper pressed down on the lid and tried to pull the zipper around the corner. It caught in the fabric. She tugged harder, then began laughing when the suitcase refused to cooperate. "Can you hold this side? Are you asking for help?" "Yes, Mom. I am asking for help with a zipper, not surrendering my independence." I held one edge while she freed the fabric and closed the suitcase herself. Before carrying it downstairs, she stopped in the living room. Caleb's photograph stood on the shelf beside Lena's blue folder. Harper touched the corner of the frame. For a moment, I thought she might place it in the suitcase again. Instead, she adjusted it so Caleb's face turned slightly toward the room. "He can stay here," she said. She did not need to carry her father as proof that her choices were permitted. Caleb had protected her voice when she was too young to understand what was being asked. Now that voice belonged to her. The night before the trip, Harper and Ruby spoke by video. Ruby remained under medical restrictions, and could not attend the program. So the girls chose a constellation they would both try to find from different places. Cygnus, Ruby said. It's easier. That's why we should choose something harder, Harper replied. They settled on Andromeda after arguing for 5 minutes. When the call ended, Harper sat on the floor beside the packed suitcase. Do you think I'll ever want to register as a donor when I'm older? She asked. I don't know. What if I don't? You do not have to decide your future to prove you are a good person today. She considered that. And if I do decide to, then it will mean something because the choice will be yours. The next morning, I drove her to the science center. Other students gathered near the entrance with backpacks, duffel bags, and nervous parents carrying more than their children had asked them to carry. I reached for the suitcase handle when Harper opened the trunk, then stopped. Do you want help? She tested its weight. I've got it. Harper rolled the silver suitcase toward the entrance. I walked beside her without touching the handle. At the registration table, she gave her own name, handed over her real medical card, and checked the box confirming that she understood the program rules. Before joining the other students, she hugged me. I'll call tonight, she said. Only if you want to. I want to. She walked away, pulling the suitcase behind her, its wheels clicking across the pavement in a rhythm that no longer sounded like someone being taken. The first time that suitcase entered our lives, it was filled with decisions other people had made for Harper. The second time, she packed it herself,